Lowell sketched the surface features of Mars, and particularly the canals, which mesmerized him. Now, observations of this sort aren't easy. You put in long hours at the telescope in the chill of the early morning. Most of the time, the seeing is crummy. When the seeing is bad, the image of Mars blurs and distorts, and you have to ignore what you've observed. But occasionally, the image steadies, and the features of the planet marvelously flash out at you. You must then remember what you've seen and accurately commit it to paper. You must put your preconceptions aside and with an open mind set down the wonders that Mars holds in store for us. This is Percival Lowell's own notebook. Here's what he thought he saw. Bright and dark areas, a hint of a polar cap, and canals. Lots and lots of canals. Lowell believed that he was seeing a globe-girdling network of great irrigation canals carrying water from the melting polar caps to the thirsty inhabitants of the equatorial cities. He believed the planet was inhabited by an older and wiser race, perhaps very different from us. He believed that the seasonal changes in the dark areas were due to the growth and decay of vegetation. He believed that the planet was Earth-like. All in all, he believed too much. Lowell's Martians were a dying race. Their once great cities had fallen into ruins. Lowell believed that the Martian climate was changing, that the precious water was trickling away into space, that the planet was becoming a desert world. The canals, he thought, were a last desperate measure, a heroic engineering effort to conserve the scarce water. But their technology, although far more advanced than ours, was inadequate to stem a planetary catastrophe. The most serious contemporary challenge to Lowell's ideas came from an unlikely source, the biologist Alfred Russel Wallace, co-discoverer of evolution by natural selection. Wallace correctly showed that the air on Mars was much too cold and thin to permit the existence of liquid water. He wrote that only a race of madmen would build canals under such conditions. Lowell's Martians were benign and hopeful, even a little godlike. Very different from the malevolent menace posed by H.G. Wells and Orson Welles in The War of the Worlds. Both sets of ideas passed into the public imagination through Sunday supplements and science fiction, and excited generations of 8-year-olds into fantasizing that they themselves might one day voyage to the distant planet Mars. I remember reading with breathless fascination the Mars novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs. I journeyed with John Carter, gentleman adventurer from Virginia, to Barsoom, as Mars was known by its inhabitants. Wandering among the beasts of burden called thoats, winning the hand of the lovely Deja Thoris, princess of Helium, and befriending a 10-foot-high green fighting man named Tars Tarkas as the moons of Mars hurtled overhead on a summer's evening on Barsoom. It aroused generations of 8-year-olds, myself among them, to consider the exploration of the planets as a real possibility, to wonder whether we ourselves might one day venture to the distant planet Mars. John Carter got to Barsoom by standing in an open field, spreading his hands and wishing hard at Mars. I can remember spending many an hour in my boyhood, arms resolutely outstretched in an open field in twilight, imploring what I believed to be Mars to transport me there. It never worked. There had to be some better way. And there was. The real road to Mars was opened by a boy who loved skyrockets. Fourth of July celebrations in New England are much the same today as they were in the 1890s. Then, as now, the highlight of the day's festivities was a rousing fireworks display. That was the part that Robert Goddard liked the best. By the time he was 16, he was launching his own rockets. He wrote in his diary, July 4th, 1898, fired cannon and firecrackers all day. In evening, had 5 rockets.
Light it now?
That same year, The War of the Worlds was being serialized in the Boston Post. Goddard eagerly read every word. The Boston newspapers were also reporting intriguing conjectures by a Professor Lowell, whose lectures Goddard would later attend. The images of Mars spun by Wells and Lowell beguiled the young Goddard. And at age 17, on October 19, 1899, they crystallized into an overwhelming vision that provided the direction and purpose of his life. From the high branches of an old cherry tree on his family's farm, Goddard saw a way to do more than just speculate about Mars. Before anyone had ever flown in an airplane or listened to a radio, Goddard decided to invent a machine that would voyage to the planet Mars.